Good evening, I'm Vincent Price. Well, tonight will come as quite a shock to some of you. After the last view we had of Sherlock Holmes tumbling over the Reichenbach Falls with his arch-enemy Professor Moriarty, who would have thought that we'd be able to introduce our new series, The Return of Sherlock Holmes. Remember, at the conclusion of the final problem, Dr. Watson was lamenting the loss of the man whom he called the best and the wisest man whom I have ever known. But what really happened? Well, Holmes's creator, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, had tired of his character and had decided to get rid of him once and for all. He would have finished him off sooner, but for the pleadings of his mother, who loved the tales of the great detective. Well, alas, even a son's love can go just so far, and Conan Doyle took a break from writing the final problem to jot his mum a quick note. I am in the middle of the last Holmes story, after which the gentleman vanishes, never to return. Mrs. Conan Doyle and thousands of other devoted Holmes fans could scarcely believe their eyes. The response was immediate. Readers implored Conan Doyle to bring back Holmes. Editors cajoled him. Agents worried him. Publishers tried to bribe him. Some people even threatened him. 8 years passed, and in 1901, Conan Doyle published a new Sherlock Holmes story, but was careful to have it take place before the Reichenbach accident. The Hound of the Baskervilles was a reminiscence, not a resurrection of Sherlock Holmes. Even so, the circulation of the Strand magazine soared over 30,000 copies an issue, beginning with the first installment of it. Hungry fans stormed the printers, not waiting until the magazine hit the bookstalls. Conan Doyle must have questioned his decision to kill off the great detective forever, for in an interview soon after, he remarked, "I know that my friend Dr. Watson is a most trustworthy man, and I gave the utmost credit to his story of the dreadful affair in Switzerland. He may have been mistaken, of course. It may not have been Mr. Holmes who fell from the ledge at all, or the whole affair might be the result of hallucination." It wasn't until 2 years later, in 1903, that Conan Doyle finally explained what really had happened at the Reichenbach Falls. And we're about to find out right now in The Adventure of the Empty House.
Hello, and welcome to the LBC Irregulars, a story-by-story review of the Jeremy Brett Sherlock Holmes series produced by Granada Television between 1984 and 1994. I'm your host, Kathy Bright, the MVP. Joining me on this adventure through Sherlock Holmes is the Sherlock to my Irene Adler, Jarrod, the yard sale artist Alberich. Hello there, Jarrod. How are you doing today?
I am well, and as our tradition dictates, I've brought you a gift for this episode. It is some fudge. It is slightly damaged and it's been burnt, and it's
Poor
actually
fudge.
Yeah, it's got dark fast. Rest in peace, fudge. I got you these hat pins. You can take the. Never mind. You know what? None of these are good for tonight.
I got you some soft nose bullets. That
All
doesn't
right,
work either.
I'll take them. Good for home defense. You better introduce our guest.
All right. This episode, we begin our review of the third season of the Granada series called The Return of Sherlock Holmes. Should that come with a spoiler warning? The Return of Sherlock Holmes? No. Since our last episode went so well with a guest, we decided to invite another member of the LBC crew. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome the one and only Weasel Skull, Jason Alberich.
How'd you know it was me? I was in this great disguise. I was going to surprise you guys. It's been 3 years. I went to Nepal. I went to some other countries that were around in the 19th century that I don't remember where he went. There was a Khmer Rouge in there somewhere.
Since Jason is disguised as the old man selling books, do you think when Sherlock's in disguises like that, like, does he actually make some sales? Is there profit in his fake book selling side scheme? Does he come home one day and be like, "Oh, Watson, I made £6 a day selling my fake books"? Just wondering.
If
Have
anyone
some
can,
smut mob novels.
If anyone could do it, it would probably be Sherlock Holmes.
Anyway, yeah. Thanks for being here, Jason.
Welcome to the show, Jason.
Hey, it's nice seeing you both again. I think it's been about 3 years since I've been on this show.
I wasn't around then.
Well, welcome back. And now it is time for Kathy to give us the recap on our first story. So if you are not familiar with The Empty House, you might just get your ending spoiled. Over to you, Kathy.
Three years after the tragic event at Reichenbach Falls, we find Watson doing his best to continue work as a criminal investigator while also working as a police surgeon. Lestrade has called Watson in to examine the body of Ronald Adair, a young card-playing aristocrat. After a court appearance, Watson is followed back to his office by a cranky, old, aggressive bookseller who is soon revealed to be none other than his dear friend, Sherlock Holmes. Holmes revives Watson after he has fainted and tells him the story of how he faked his death at the falls to keep any followers of Moriarty from attempting revenge on Holmes. The joyous reunion concluded quickly. Holmes and Watson conceal themselves in an empty house across the street from 221B. Holmes has determined that the person who killed Ronald Adair is also a follower of Moriarty and will soon arrive to attempt to kill Holmes in the same manner. Will he succeed? Keep listening if you want to find out.
Thank you, Kathy. And now it's time for some highs, lows, and what does. And we'll each take a look at the good and the bad, or the meh, or the whatever of this episode. We will start with our guest, Jason, the Weasel Skull Alberich. Round one. What do you got?
Well, I guess I'll just throw out the obvious. The big high is the return of Sherlock Holmes. I mean, we all thought he was gone, but he's back. And what a return it is, too. I mean, Watson, I read the story and I watched the episode, obviously.
Show up.
I know. I'm an overachiever. This is Holmes, though. You don't half-step Holmes. You gotta... I almost said a bad word.
Jared, everybody's doing it except for you.
Except for me, yeah. Mm.
Everybody's doing it, Jared. Why don't you?
Come on, Jared. You know you want to.
Jason.
At any rate, it was really exciting to see Sherlock Holmes come back in this episode. I thought the two actors really played it well. It was in alignment with the book. A little more gravitas, just seeing their facial expressions and watching Watson just pass out. And you know he had to be a little bit pissed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he handled it well. So I would have been pissed
but he's
off.
just so glad to see his friend back that he can't even stay mad at him. And I don't know. It was just a beautiful moment, both captured in the text and on the film.
I think that showed on his face when you could see the disappointment when he talked about how Mycroft knew that Sherlock was alive. And he was like, and you didn't trust me to give me that information. You could just see the disappointment in his face.
Holmes was like, but your problem is you have a bigger heart. Mycroft's cold enough to keep that from everybody.
Right. Yeah.
Because I think that Watson wouldn't be able to tell, like, Mrs. Hudson. And I know it's not my turn. I'm stepping on Kathy's turn, but since we're talking about the return and all of Holmes.
I think that's all of our favorite,
yeah,
our number one high. So
I like how we got to see him at his most emotionally physical. Mrs. Hudson was holding him and crying, and he could just barely bring himself to embrace her, but you could tell he wanted to. It's just like his personality was like a robot, do not know what to do, but
he was so confused.
Like the right thing, and he played it so well. He played it so well. Kathy, it is actually your turn for round one.
Actually, that was my number one favorite moment, but I do have another high. I loved the scene when Sherlock was watching Holmes at the falls. He was having to watch his friend accept the fact that he wasn't there. And at the end, he almost calls out to him, but then he doesn't. And I just loved watching that scene.
That was good. That was good.
I thought it was a little odd, though, the way the camera filmed it. It looked like Watson could just look right up and see him like, oh, there he is.
I thought the same thing, too. And that we'll talk about that in my lows.
Okay.
I did notice, speaking of the camera work, and I don't know if this is your low or not, that they kind of kept it far enough away since they were transitioning actors. You never really got the distant shots of Watson. I did want to talk about the replacement, Watson. And I forgot this. I remember thinking, okay, I like David Burke better, but I think Edward Hardwicke is good. I think he's fine. But I'd forgotten Hardwicke deserves some excellent praise for this episode because he is the through point of the episode. He carries it into what it is. And that is a lot to put on your shoulders to be like, hey, you have to carry this episode. It's the beginning of season 3. One of the best Watsons of all time, actor-wise, has left. You've got to carry this episode. I was like, man.
And the whole first 15 minutes is just him monologue and in the court, which is a great scene too.
It is a great scene, and he was just, you could tell how Holmes had affected him and how people were giving testimony purely based off of emotions and stuff. And he's just like shaking his head like, nope, this doesn't matter. So anyway, for my first round, I just wanted to be like, I'm a big David Burke guy. I don't have anything against Edward Hardwicke, but watching it again, Hardwicke is actually, his stock has risen with me. I was like, that was really good. He had a tall task and he pulled it off.
I've mentioned in another episode how concerned I was because I absolutely loved David Burke. So I was nervous, but I was quite impressed.
Yeah, he's very good. Just terribly unlucky to go after what might be the best Watson ever. Although I got a soft spot in my heart for H. Marion Crawford. But anyway, so we'll get into round 2. Jason, back to you. Lots to talk about, lots to think about in this one. What do you got?
Well, there wasn't much of a mystery to this. But what I did like about it was the sense of the hunt. And London was the jungle. Holmes was the predator. And Moran was his very deadly prey. And you really get the sense of the danger. And you see it from Watson's perspective. So you know you're in danger, but you don't know quite what you're in danger from. So that sense of tension is woven through that whole story from beginning to end. So even though it didn't have a mystery, it had the hunt. And also another great little piece I loved from Watson was when he doesn't even know what he's getting himself into. Holmes said, "We'll be in great danger. Will you come with me tonight?" And he says, "Anywhere you want, anytime you want."
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. That's
his boy.
It's a boy right there.
Whose car are we taking?
You have your service revolver? Oh, it's around here somewhere. That's good gun safety, Watson. It's around here somewhere.
They are both very quick nappers, I have to say.
Yes. Dude was like, man, I've been traveling. I've been in disguise. I've been running around all day. I just need to take a quick nap. I can get you on the flip side. He was out. And just another great scene too, though, because Watson kind of stands over him and he's just, like Jason said, he's just so happy to see his friend. And he emoted that really well. Just kind of watching him sleep. He just looks so happy to see him.
And he puts a blanket over him.
Yeah, put the blanket, tucked him in. Ah, it was nice. I brought a little tear to my eye. Kathy, round 2.
I'm going to go with a low this round. And it's kind of like Jason was alluding to just a minute ago. The way they filmed the falls scene bothered me a little bit. I did like that they did the recap of the fight when he's telling the story about how it all went down. But then when they show him climbing up to what seemed to be the exact spot that they supposedly fell from. But then the very next scene, he's at the base of the falls and looks like he's about 200 yards away from the falls.
You paid better attention than I did.
Visually, it was confusing on his journey away from the falls.
I think the most important thing to remember here is I've been to the Swiss Alps. Don't know if I've talked about that before.
I feel like I've heard mention of that.
Funny story. I think Jason has too.
I have, yes.
Anyways, I didn't really notice it as much, but I might have zoned out, Kathy, because I'm like, it's just a recap of something I already saw. So I didn't pay as much attention to it. To me, I only got interested in it again when they were like, and then this dude Moran hunted me for like 10 miles. I was like, oh, he had a big day.
Right. Well, and that was still, even that part was a bit confusing. I did want to say that was one difference in the short story versus the episode, is in the short story, there's someone throwing boulders down at Sherlock as he's climbing up the side of the falls. But in this, it was a gun. But still, the way it was shot was confusing because the guy was on top of the falls and Sherlock, I think he was by the trees at the time, the uprooted trees, but it still looked like he was 200 yards away from him. And then I thought, wouldn't they have heard gunshots in the woods?
You know, if you'd been to the Alps, you'd understand.
You're probably right. You're probably right.
Oh.
Folks, don't ever podcast with the Alberich brothers.
Last time she'll have us both on the show.
Oh, well, that's quite all right. That's quite all right. I'm going to throw a bit of a what the in, but I'm going to move it from the Swiss Alps, where I have been and have some experience, into London. My kind of what the was, first of all, let me make it a high, because it was kind of cool that Sherlock looked to Watson and say, Watson, you know, you've been kind of practicing while I've been gone. Well, how do you think this went down? And Watson laid out his theory, and Holmes was like, yep, I think you got it. I was like, that's cool.
I totally love that scene. He completely got the acknowledge from Holmes that he'd been searching for all this time.
Rare.
And that is a deviation from the source material, because in the source material, Holmes lays it out and explains it.
True.
I like the film better. I like the way that that's done.
And if it had been Nigel Bruce, he would have put together a thing that would have been completely wrong. And Basil Rathbone.
It was a vampire who turned into a bat and then a bat.
But my what the is the whole thing with Ronald, the victim, is basically caught Moran cheating, right? And he's going to ruin him. So Moran killed him, right? Like you said, Jason, not a big mystery. But the way they talked about it, like Moran had served in the military with Ronald's father. And so I thought of it. Maybe I just overthought it, but I was like, if I was playing cards with one of the guys that went to war with my dad, and I found out he was cheating, I would have just talked to him privately. Like, I wouldn't have tried to ruin him over it. I mean, that's a dude that went to war with your father.
Number one, I don't remember the father and Moran being in the service together. I might have missed that.
I am 99% sure he said that this guy served with his father.
Okay. But regardless, in the book, and I think that's what they were alluding to in the show as well, he wasn't necessarily trying to ruin him. That's why he didn't say anything. He wanted to protect his honor, but he was going to demand that he not play at that club again. He wasn't going to turn him in. And he did. He said, you try to play here again, then I'll turn you in. And he had the money out on the desk because he was going to give it back. He was trying to figure out how much he won from each person when he was partnered with Colonel Moran.
Oh, okay.
And so he was going to return the money, and Moran made his living doing that. So that's why he killed him.
Okay, that makes more sense. Fair enough. And with that, anybody got anything left on their note cards? Any pat points to make on this rather welcome back episode for season 3?
It was pretty short and to the point, really. It was boiled down to the bare essence, but a lot of fun and just great seeing our boys back together again.
and Mrs. Hudson crawling around on her hands and knees, moving that statue Home Alone style, you know?
Yes. I don't know, in 45 minutes, like you got, or was it 15? Even 15 minutes. He's been staying in the position of attention from that window for 15 minutes.
I was going to say that's one of my miniature lows is that, I mean, the bust looked incredible, but how was anybody fooled?
It would have been much more convincing if he'd been like seated and like maybe nodded off, because then you'd be holding still.
Right.
Otherwise, just bolt upright, staring out his window. Anyway, unless you got anything else, Kathy, it's to you for if you have additional points or if you want to lead it into scoring, however you want to play it.
I do have some annoyances. This is not about the episode. This is about the people in the episode. That judge in the courtroom, I did not like the way he treated our Watson.
Nah, he was a jerk.
I felt like he was intentionally holding off saying his name as in a, you're not important enough for me to know your name.
I was wondering if it was that or, you know, a lot of people in the law chain of command have been put off by Sherlock Holmes. Was it his association with Holmes? Like, oh, he's that guy.
Oh, that's a good point.
I didn't think about that.
I couldn't figure out which of the two it was. Like, It was either your name's not worth remembering or it's that guy.
Because he also, the way he was quick to say that's speculative, but yet then he asked, and I don't remember if it was Moran or if it was his godfather, when he specifically asked them, well, how did he seem to you? It's like, that's the perfect example of speculating what, how this person was. I was annoyed.
I think that's when Watson rolled his eyes too.
Yeah, he did. But I think that's all the Pat points I had. Let's discuss what we thought of this episode. Luckily, we have a system just for that. On a scale of 1 to 5 pipes, 5, you loved it. It solved your mystery.
Aha!
4, it was really good. 3, it was all right. 2, you did not like it. And 1, you hated it. It threw you off of Reichenbach Falls. Let's get to those ratings. Jason, as our guest, what would you rate this episode?
My heart wants to give it a 5 because it's the return of Sherlock Holmes. But in reality, it's a 4 because it's a return of Sherlock Holmes without much of a mystery, but still a heck of a good story. So 4 for me.
I will agree with you. That's exactly what I thought as well. Should be a 5 because it's the return of Sherlock, but still a little lacking in everything that was not related to his return. So I'm giving it a 4 as well. Jared?
Boom, boom, laka, boom, 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 laka, boom, boom. Open the door, get on the floor. Everybody's rating it a 4, and for the exact same reasons, Jason. In my heart, it's a 5 for the emotional moments. I get a little tear in my eye whenever Mrs. Hudson is just freaking out and holding him, and he doesn't quite know what to do. It's just a great moment. But the mystery was just so thin. It was more about the hunt than the mystery. I'm pretty sure Jason already said that. It's a 4.
Old Mrs. Hudson hadn't been shot at in 3 years. She was just so excited to be back in the game.
It might be good to remember at this point that even Sherlock Holmes admitted that Professor Moriarty was his intellectual equal. So if Holmes escaped destruction at Reichenbach, why not his archenemy as well? Needless to say, this unsolved mystery has prompted Holmes scholars all over the world to come up with dozens of theories. More than one observer has pointed out the state of the world at the early part of the 20th century to show that Moriarty's evil presence was clearly at work. Only the Napoleon of crime, as they claim, could have been behind the outbreak of the Russian Revolution, the stock market crash, and 2 world wars. Another devotee says that Moriarty's corpse was never found because he had developed a terrible weapon called the atomic accelerator, which, as a last resort, he had used upon himself. The weapon would supposedly accelerate the atoms in any mass and thus cause it to shrink out of existence. Well, critics of this particular theory remind us that for this to have happened, the mass energy pressure required would not only have destroyed Reichenbach Falls, but probably would have left a large hole in place of Switzerland. Next week, the game's afoot as Holmes and Watson unravel a very strange case of murder in the adventure of the Abbey Grange. Until then, for Mystery, I'm Vincent Price. Good night.
All right, that is the end of this episode. I'm just kidding. It's not the end of the episode. I pull that bit from time to time. There's more. And here is Kathy to give us the recap of the second episode that we watched, The Abbey Grange. Again, if you're not familiar with the story, you might get your ending spoiled. So check out Abbey Grange sometime before now and when she starts talking.
Good evening and welcome to Mystery. I'm Vincent Price. Tonight, Sherlock Holmes finds that murder can be a very tricky business in the adventure of the Abbey Grange. Now, in another story, Holmes paraphrased Shakespeare to describe himself. Age does not wither me, nor custom stale my infinite variety. It seems odd that Sherlock Holmes would identify with Shakespeare's Cleopatra, but it's not at all odd for him to quote Shakespeare. As a university man whose range of knowledge was outstanding, he was extremely familiar with the works of the bard and quoted from him all the time. In tonight's episode, Holmes bursts in upon his friend Watson and rouses him to action with, "Come, Watson, come, the game's afoot." You recognize that? Henry IV, Part 1, and Henry V. This famous line, which seems to epitomize all of the great detective's adventures, has become the most often quoted of Holmes's expressions. Of course, elementary, my dear Watson, is quoted more often, but as we've mentioned before, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Holmes never actually said that. Twelfth Night seems to have been his favorite Shakespearean play, or at least the one he referred to most often. In The Empty House, when Holmes surprised the treacherous Colonel Moran, he remarked, "Journeys end in lovers' meeting." It's a passage which might also apply to tonight's story, the adventure of the Abbey Grange.
Holmes has been summoned to Brackenstall Estate by Inspector Hopkins. Even though initial evidence points to Lady Mary being attacked and Sir Eustace being murdered by local criminals, the Randall gang, Holmes isn't quite convinced. He questions their facts based on the state of 3 glasses supposedly used by the robbers. During the investigation of the property, Holmes finds the butchered remains of a family pet and determines that Sir Eustace might have caused the bruising to Lady Mary. Holmes and Watson go to the shipping company that brought Lady Mary to England and discover she had a friendship with the first officer, Jack Crocker. They obtain all the information they need to piece together what happened that night at Brackenstall Estate. Was it murder? Was it self-defense? Keep listening. You just might find out.
All right. Thank you, Kathy. And now it's time for highs, lows, what those. We'll take a look at the good, the bad, the meh, of each episode. And we'll go back to Jason for round 1 in a much more complex episode than the first one.
Absolutely. There was a lot to like in this one. I'm struggling to pare it down to one thing and not just go full pat right out here out of the gate. No, I think I'll focus on my round talking about Holmes screwed up. And it's interesting to see Holmes screw up. He catches it at the last minute, but he just knows instinctively, I'm missing something. I'm missing. He's on that train and Watson's talking to him and you can just see in his facial expression, I missed something. And then as soon as he puts it together, pop, we got to get off this train. He's like banging on the window from the outside of the train. Watson's like, what's going on? We got to go back. So it's always fun to see Holmes get snookered, and he almost gets snookered on this one. And that's fun.
And that was the wine glasses, right?
Yes.
Okay. Jason, you're really good at paying attention to these things. So I'm going to go to you on this. Kathy, you might have got it as well. I've just been going to Jason on these kind of things for 46 years now. Jason, help me out with the wine glasses thing. I watched it twice and I was like, I still didn't quite get what he was saying. Like, I got the fact that he was like, they basically fake poured them the 3rd glass, but how did he, like, something about crystallization? I don't know. Can you help me out?
Yeah. So basically they had poured 2 glasses and the nanny didn't drink. So, but then they realized they told a story where there were 3 people. So they needed 3 glasses. And so they poured the dregs into a 3rd glass. And that's how Holmes knew, because he said it would have, what was the term? The bees something?
Sediment in.
That's what I thought too, yeah. And so he said it would have been, they had all taken it at the same time. There would have been equal in there. But it was all concentrated in the one glass.
Correct.
Okay. And I kind of got that, but maybe it was the terms they were using. I was like, I just want to make sure I got it. Okay. I appreciate it. Because I watched it twice and I was still like, got me again. I'm not quite certain there.
Yeah. In the book too, there was also, they didn't do it in the show, I don't think, but he noticed that there was blood on the chair where the woman was tied up. And he realized that blood had to have been there before they put her in that chair. So yeah, he just kind of bought the story, but it was the wine glasses that was triggering. There's something not right about that. And that was interesting. It was just interesting to see him puzzle over that, and it's just tormenting him the whole way back.
Definitely. Kathy, round 1, high or low?
I'm going to give it a trivia nugget first before I do my first high. I noticed when they were pulling up to the property, I was like, that house looks so familiar. Has this been in another episode? Google told me that it was the exact same house that they used for the Speckled Band.
Aha. Yeah, I bet there's a couple of sort of locations that are old-timey and don't have like air conditioners sticking out the windows and stuff, that they can use. Okay, so cool.
Let's go to my first high. And that is still the relationship with Holmes and Watson. The shade that they both threw at each other in this episode are two of my absolute favorite moments. One in the train ride to the Abbey Grange. And Sherlock gives them a hard time about them being stories versus them being how-to books on how to investigate.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Watson said, well, you should write them then.
Exactly.
He's like, I will. In my doddering years. I'm still in the game, son.
And then the smile that comes on Watson's face later in the episode when the guy that works at the shipping company acknowledges that it's because of Watson's stories that he understands what information that Holmes needs. And the smile on Watson's face was I love, they're both so sassy to each other. I just love it.
The British term is a shite-eating grin, I think. Is what
There you go. Exactly.
Oh, man. Yeah, this was a busy episode, especially as compared to the last one. There was just a lot going on. There was wine bottles. There was a busted bell rope, which I also don't quite understand what that had to do with anything, but Jason probably explained it to me later. There was...
Sounds like somebody needs to read the short stories.
Apparently I do. There was a dead dog, which made me sad.
I don't think the dead dog was in the short story, was it?
He was told the story. It was either the ship captain or the
mate,
her assistant. Yeah, told Holmes that basically he had set the dog on fire, killed the dog by setting it on fire, and threatened to do the same to her.
Because in the short story, it was they find the silver in the pond.
Yeah, they found it on the show too.
Was it? Oh, okay. Oh, that's right, under the log. Okay.
Yeah, the story, it was winter time and there was a hole cut in the pond. Correct. And that's where Holmes knew that's where the silver is.
Yeah, Holmes's powers of observation of like, that log hasn't moved since the last time. I was like, damn, okay. But it just has a lot of layers. And the one that I kept going back to was the dog thing. Because like, they made a big deal out of it. Got the headstone, it was broken, it was repaired, it was rebroken, found his collar. Eventually found out he'd burnt the dog. They mentioned that too. I was like, dang, man, that's messed up. I mean, luckily we didn't ever have to see that. But then it clicked. I was like, I saw it from Doyle's point of view. He's like, I need to write a story where basically this dude comes and kills this lady's husband and takes her, but we root for him. How do I do that? Kill a dog. If I make this guy, I mean,
it worked for me.
It was like
100 years later.
He's like, oh, he's abusive to his wife. And I'm like, that sucks. That guy's a jerk, And he was like, and he killed her dog. I was like, he has to die.
Got off easy, you son of a...
Something about those dogs, man. And you never even saw the dog. But anyway, it was very busy and very multi-layered. And it was, unfortunately, like I said, I watched it twice, but both times it was sort of under some distracting circumstances. And that's why I watched it twice. So I might have missed a couple of things. Like the bell rope. Jason, will you kind of help me out on the bell rope this time?
Yes, I will. So Holmes surmised that the bell rope would break. The most natural place it would break would be up at the top where
the friction is. That makes sense.
Attached to the bell. But it didn't. And it didn't because the captain couldn't get all the way up there. He got up and he cut the rope. He got as far as he could get up there and then cut the rope down. But the captain was smart and knew that if it was inspected, it could be told it was cut. So he frayed it with his knife to make it appear as though the rope had snapped, that there was a weakness in the line. And when it was tugged, that's where it did.
But why? What was he trying to conceal? That's the part I didn't get.
Well, I think it was because the whole story was her being tied up. And I guess in their version of the story they're telling is the robbers came in, oh, here's something to tie her up, supposedly pull it down.
Yank the rope, that's what they used to tie her up. Okay.
Correct.
Because the whole time I was thinking down the wrong track. They were trying to prevent someone from ringing the alarm.
That was the thing, because what they surmised was if it was somebody from outside the house, they would not want that bell to ring. Like those that were inside the house knew that the maids and the servants all stayed in that separate area and probably wouldn't have heard the bell. But anybody coming in wouldn't know that. So they would want to cut that rope instead of trying to.
Okay, so dual purpose. They were trying to make sure no one was alarmed, and they used the rope to tie her up.
And that's what they used to tie her up.
But they basically said they yanked it down, so he had to make it fake look like it had been yanked down.
Right.
Okay.
That's how I understood it.
All coming together. Y'all are helping me out on this one. All I know is that someone set a dog on fire, and I didn't get it. So let's get into round 2. We go back to Jason. What you got?
Another element that I really enjoyed with this is one of those episodes where Holmes flouts the law. He serves up his own justice. And Watson is a little uncomfortable with it, but goes along with it. And I always enjoy those where you get to see Holmes just lives in a world of his own. Like he's a detective on such a plane of his own. He's got his own code of right and wrong. And this is one of those cases where he just makes the call. And it's illegal as hell what he does. I mean, it is, he would be an accessory at this point, but he does it. And we, as the viewers, understand why he does. And that makes it very morally complicated and very interesting.
He even tested the guy.
Yes.
Remember? He gave him like a fake free out, and the guy was like, "No, sir, that won't do. I did this thing."
Won't do.
And he was like, it was but a test and you passed. This man is aces at all turns or something like that. What he said. But they really went out of their way to build up how likable the guy was, the sea captain. I love when they went to the office and to talk to the shipping guy, like the boss of shipping. And the boss, is he a well thought of guy? And he was like, well, why don't you tell him to the secretary lady? And she just gets that big smile. And basically he's like, the ladies love him. he's so
You can hear Prince singing Cream in the background.
He's charming. He's nice. He's fun. And so I think that really helped in what you were saying, Jace. Like he had all these reports that this guy is just a top shelf kind of guy, and the husband was just awful.
Not.
So anyways, Kathy, go ahead. Second round.
One of my notes, I quote, Jack Crocker in the all-white naval uniform.
Ladies love the all-white Navy uniform. This would be a good time for you to talk about Tom Cruise, Kathy.
It would
and
be
his all-white Navy uniform. I think he's done that in 2
movies
or
now.
3. You got Top Gun 2, and A Few Good Men.
Few Good Men, that's right. How could I forget A Few Good Men? We want him on that wall. We need him on that wall.
It's a look I'm fond of.
Well, bad news, Jason and I, neither one of us had the white uniform. Mine was blue. Jason
Mine was
green.
ugly ass green, man.
A uniform is a uniform. We're on to round 2 for me. I think I'm going to say it's another high. And I want to say it's just the episode as a whole, as in the script I really liked. The acting I really liked, the way it was filmed, like the directing, the use of reflection and mirrors and doorways, I just thought was very intriguing. Her description of the events that happened and the alcoholism of her husband, which come to find out was about her actual father, I believe, at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Just the way even Watson praised the way she described that situation. He called it very did he say eloquent and compassionate, or maybe he
Mhm.
just said, maybe I added eloquent, but very compassionate. Overall, I just really, really enjoyed the way the episode was put together.
It was well shot. I'll admit while I did watch it twice and had some difficulties with some of those details, one detail I actually paused and went frame by frame on is for a minute there, and I'm still not convinced it's not. But at the beginning when they're on the train, there's a ticket taker that comes by, and he's kind of half face in shadow, and I could swear that the part we saw was the actor who played Moriarty. And I paused it, and I was like, is that? And I frame by framed it.
Oh, I don't know. I was wondering. I remember taking note of that scene. It was like, why are they showing just? Yeah, and it's like they zoomed in on the first class, and
and I thought, and then I started thinking, does Moriarty come back? I don't know that he does. I can't remember. So I think I was wrong. If you said it was shot in such a way that I thought I was meant to take notice of it, maybe I wasn't. But it was definitely one of the more. There's going to be some. I do remember this. There's going to be some more artsy ones. Sometimes they get a little too artsy for me. But this one,
Moriarty.
Moriarty, a little Moriarty. But I tell you what, I'll be specific in that I really did like the way this one started too. It was like just, bam, here comes Holmes. Watson. He utters the great line, "The game is afoot. We are pedal to the metal here, man." And it was neat to see him interact with a law enforcement officer that he clearly worked with before, who, it's very normal, like we said, for Holmes to be kind of at odds with law enforcement. There's a bit of a professional rivalry with Lestrade, but this guy that he'd worked with before clearly had respect for him. Like, we haven't touched any of the crime scene. We know that you know what you're doing, and it never really poo-pooed him. It's sort of a trope, I guess, for it to be law enforcement versus Holmes, and it was just kind of neat to see them being partners in step.
That was one thing we didn't talk about in the other episode, was the scene where Lestrade and Watson talk about Holmes before we know he's not dead. And Lestrade's like, I may not have always agreed with his process, but he even got the better of me sometimes. So
every time.
I like when he told Lestrade, "You did all right." Like your usual bumbling self is kind of where he was going with that.
Yeah, I thought it was neat to see him work with law enforcement in a cooperative way. That is the end of our official rounds. Who's got Pat points?
The only small thing I had was just more of a annoyance. The scene where they're finally telling Holmes what happened, and they're reenacting kind of what happened with Crocker and Sir Eustace. And it shows them going around the room, hitting the table, hitting all these pieces of furniture.
I noticed it too.
How on earth did Sherlock Holmes not see marks on the table or marks on the chair or the wall and all these things?
I thought the same thing.
Very, very good point.
I was like, this is like a trail of it.
Exactly. And
just banging foreheads on the table.
And he missed every spot of that.
Now, they did clean up, they prepped the scene, but
they're buffing that table off.
The table feels like things got broken, like vases or something. Maybe not, but I noticed it too, Kathy. I did notice it.
That was my own little, as Jared would say, bugaboo about the episode.
Bugaboo.
Eustace got his teeth kicked in at one point.
Oh, man. All right. Jason, anything left?
No, I think I'm good.
I do have a question. If either of y'all may or may not have noticed these things. When they're going into the shipping company and Holmes taps the cane up against that concrete column. And I remember another episode, he did it it was one of the first few episodes that I was involved with, and he taps his cane on the ground. Have y'all ever noticed? League. Okay.
He's finding the hollow tunnel that was running under the street.
Okay. I was just curious if that was some kind of Holmes thing that I've never noticed before. He's just done it in a couple episodes.
And now you made me remember in the first episode that we talked about tonight about how he came back and it was 2:21 as he had left it. I don't know. That just felt so good. He saw the Persian slipper where they keep the tobacco. Like, it was actually Mycroft who had kept it.
Yeah, I think he said Mycroft kept it.
I was a little touched by that too. I was like, oh, a little tear. Anyway, it's to you, Kathy, for the pipes.
All right. I think we're done with our discussion of the Abbey Grange episode. So let's talk about some pipe ratings. What did we think of this episode? Once again, luckily, we have a system just for that. On a scale of 1 to 5 pipes, 5, you loved it. It solved your mystery.
Aha!
4, it was really good.
Mm-hmm.
3, it was all right.
Mm.
2, you did not like it. 1, you hated it. It threw you off of Reichenbach Falls. How would you rate this story, Jason?
Again, I kind of wanted to give this one a 5 based off of the short story. However, I think that they padded it a little bit with the dog stuff, trying to get a few more minutes of mystery out of there. And there's just kind of like 1 or 2 too many clues, I think. It's like, okay, I got it. But overall, I thought this was a really good 1-2 combination that we did tonight. Because 1, we got to see the return of Sherlock Holmes, not much of a mystery. Then 2, right after that, we get to see Holmes and Watson doing what they do best. I always kind of enjoy it when it's in a setting outside of London, kind of change of venue. So that was fun as well. So that's a long-winded way of me saying, I'm going to give this one another 4.
Jared, what about you?
Probably a product of growing up in the same house and reading the same Sherlock Holmes book, literally the same copy of the book. But I'm going to give it a 4 for the same reasons. First one was light on mystery. This one was a little too burdened by it. It was still fun, but like I said, I struggled with, the glasses, the rope, fudge, the log that didn't move, the silver out in the lake. It was just kind of all over the place, like mystery everywhere.
But the one they didn't do, which is the one I thought was the giveaway in the book, was the blood on the chair, which would have been, I think, a smarter play.
But still, it was really well shot, and I'm out of 4 as well.
Wrong. Y'all both do it again.
5, so yes, we're 5.
Well, I thought about giving this a 4, but I'm just the opposite of you guys. I like that it was heavy in the mystery. I love the episodes where he takes us through his process. At first, he missed things and he had to turn around and he had to really investigate this. And that's what I like about Sherlock Holmes. And I thought the episode was done so well. There was so much relationship. There was so much relationship. I gave this episode a 5.
There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. I did like, by the way, when he went back and he told old girl, he's like, listen, I know you're lying. Tell me the truth. And I can make this go really a lot better for you. And she stuck to her lie. I'm like, you have the world's most famous detective looking you in the eye and saying, I know you're lying to me.
He's like, are you sure?
And he's like, I will help you in every way I can if you confide in me as if I were a friend. And she stuck to that lie.
She was not going to be defeated.
Gutsy.
It's interesting in the story, which they didn't really do in this episode, which I think might have bumped it up to a 5 for me. Because in the story, he actually sits in front of Scotland Yard for several minutes in the carriage. And he's contemplating. And Watson is telling, he's tormented. Should I go in and do this thing? And at the end, he doesn't. I always found that very interesting. And he also, in the story with Hopkins, the reason why he tells Hopkins where to find the silver is he gives Hopkins the clue and the chance to figure out the same thing he did. So he didn't have to tell Hopkins if that silver was in there. But in the story, he does it because he's like, I'm going to give him a shot. I'm going to give him all the evidence that I have. And that's how he justifies what he does in his
Interesting. Like that. Very cool. Good insight there as we wrap things up. But before we ride off in our handsome cab for this episode, let's thank the Crusaders Club members who help pay the rent here at 221B. These are the fine folks who have joined our crusade, tied their silver up in a bundle and tossed it in our lake. They enjoy early access to special LONGBOX CRUSADE episodes. They get to vote on show content and so much more. So here are the folks reaping the benefits and giving some much appreciated support to the show.
Angelica Wolf.
No.
Auburn Elvis.
Bill Beer.
Blast It or Stash It.
Braxton Underwood.
Captain Entropy.
Clinton Robinson.
Dave Collins. Battle Wagon.
Gary Viola.
Gene Hendricks,
Gerald Green,
Jason Keene,
Jason Lady,
Jeremy L.,
Jim Jarman, Jim Jarman, Jim Jarman, Jim Jarman. I hope you like Jim Jarman too.
Jim Meal,
Joe Thomas,
Appropriately named John Watson.
Josh Strickland.
Candace Ward,
Captivating Kathy Bright, the MVP.
That's me. Mark Ross, also known as Cluck Trent.
Maxwell Traver,
Michael Wagner.
Miranda W.
P.D. Devons,
Paul Hicks.
Rick from Jeff and Rick Present.
Rob Morgan,
Ross Michaud.
Ryan Daly.
Samantha Maney,
Sean Urbanski.
Spidey 67.
Spreadsheet,
Steve Cronin.
Tim Price.
Tony Pennington.
And the Toronto Cop. If we missed you on our list, of course, we apologize. Keep in mind we record these episodes well in advance of release, so if you're a recent edition, we will add you soon, but no worries. Let us know we missed you by sending an email to contact@longboxcrusade.com. We will get it straightened out. As a reminder, you can become a Crusaders Club member by heading to patreon.com/longboxcrusade. For as little as just $1 a month, you get access to the amazing world of Crusaders Club. Come and check it out. We appreciate it. We use your money to put back into you by free raffle giveaways, things like that. And we use it for technology upgrades to make the show sound better. So thank you for those of you who support us. We appreciate it. Offer not available in all areas, especially for Jason.
Well, that will wrap up these two stories. We'd love to hear from you if you are familiar with any variation of Sherlock Holmes, including the Granada adaptations. You can find the Long Box on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at LONGBOX CRUSADE. Our email address, contact@longboxcrusade.com. Our phone number, Jared?
707-532-5269. That is 707-532-LBOX. Pick up the phone. Now, if you want to chat with me personally, I can be found at Yard Sale Artist, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. It's all at Yard Sale Artist. You can check out my art wares at www.theyardsaleartist.com. Kathy.
I can be found on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at AUKathy2418, and that's Kathy with a K. Jason, what about you?
Well, I'm kind of taking a breath of fresh air and have been off social media for a little bit. But if you want to reach out to me, you can reach me at RAAP as in Papa, HO at yahoo.com, or leave me a message on 707-532-5269. That's 707-532-LBOX, and I will return your call.
Be sure to join us next quarter as we take a look at 2 more episodes from Season 3, The Return of Sherlock Holmes, as aired on ITV in England. The Musgrave Ritual and The Second Stain.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks
Cheerio.
for coming, Jason. Bye.
Hip, hip, cheerio.
Outtakes.
And there's some probably good juicy nuggets up in there,
You
too.
know there's some good stuff in there.
I know,
Juicy
I know.
nuggets. You got an outtake right there. Juicy nuggets.
Apparently not.
I was kidding. They're fine. Let's go. Jason rebooted his whole computer and got his documents up. Just saying.
I'm a professional.
Kathy's like, I'm not.
Between
Wrong. Do it again.
Let me find my script. Hang on a second.
See, I have a second screen that I picked up at a Goodwill.
I need 3 because I have my notes and I have the script.
Same.
But see, that's what
What I do is I have a second screen and
I'm starting over.
yeah.
I
You listen
listen.
to my advice, which I've
Sometimes.
yet to get Jason. He's saying
What's that?
something.
I do it my way.
Yeah, he does what he wants. It's part of his job.
I did it my way.
Leave Jason a message. I got 45 minutes of you and Jason talking about God knows what somewhere.
Just sitting on his floor, clipped out on his floor somewhere.
Kathy.
Pick up the phone.
Or perhaps in this case, send me a telegraph. Get it? Because it's old.
Cable me.